So this time we'll walk through the process of just kind of starting a brand new right-of-way drawing, at least for this one, and we'll kind of just work through the full process, and then in the end you can use this, either use this drawing or kind of follow this. It'd probably be good to just follow this method and kind of start a new one for you too. So I'm going to record this too, so you can take notes as you want. But so we're just going to start with a blank AutoCAD drawing, and we're just basically going to be routing in some of the files, like the survey file and the civil file, but we're not going to start with them. So the first thing, we want to bring the survey file in. So we want to type in I for insert, and this is a block. So we want to browse. So I've already browsed to the folder on the server, so the DJM folder. So this 3478 Bristol Airport Road is the survey drawing. So I'm just going to click it and open, and we want to explode it. That just makes it where it's multiple objects, but make sure none of these are checked, because we don't want to specify any of these. We want it to just put in there where it's supposed to go. So we click OK. And this will take just a second. Alright. So you see it? So nothing's in there. So again, and this is partly based on like the survey coordinates. So again, when we start a blank drawing, this is kind of 0, 0, where our survey coordinates are somewhere else in space. So the best way to find them is, so we hit Z for zoom, enter, and then you can see all these options down here. One of them is E for extents, so that'll zoom the drawing to anything that's within the drawing, any object. It'll zoom out to find it. So we hit E, and we still can't see anything. And this is partly because our surveyor does something weird. So if I zoom out a little bit, you see some stuff over here, and then you see this little dot over here.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but I think the dot is basically his house in Oklahoma City. So you just go and delete that. Now zoom, extents, and here's the actual survey. But it always comes with that little dot that's way over there. Most of the time everything we do is further east, so we know that one, but you could kind of get that idea. So now we brought this drawing in. So kind of same thing as what you're used to seeing. So what I want to do here is doing it this way, we can kind of draw in what we need and then kind of clean up everything else, and get it out of the way. So the first thing I want to do is create a new layer, and again go layer properties, new layer, and I want to call this like the section, and then S, so statutory right of way, and then we'll keep it that blue color, if that helps. And I want to make that the current layer by double clicking there. Okay, and so what we're going to do is, well, those are already blue, but I'm just going to change this color real quick so we can tell the difference. So we want to do what we had before and draw these section lines in and draw our statutory right-of-way lines in, right? So, and everything, we're going to start from this. This is the section corner. So the northwest corner of section 1. So we're just going to basically trace these lines, which ideally should be the same as this bearing, right? So even just for now, I'm going to get rid of a few of these things that are cluttering things up. So I'm going to go to the freeze and just getting rid of the contours, just because they're kind of in the way, and even that helps. So we're in this command, we're going to draw, or in this layer, we're going to draw a line, so L. Now I've got my snap turned on, which again was F3, and I've only got endpoint. So we're going to go to the first point and going to come right on this corner, and then we're going to go down first. So we're going to keep scrolling. For one, we know generally he writes the bearing about halfway down. So you find that and then keep scrolling down, and then he'll have his statutory right of way, and then right about here, this will be the kind of midpoint of the section, but we want to click here because after that the bearing changes. Okay, so if we click here, right click. Okay, so I'm going to highlight this. Okay, and then we're going to go back up and verify it. So it should be the same length at the same bearing. So 26, 32, 76. So we have that same length. Okay, but the angle here. So this is something, I think yours automatically did it the right way, but so now the angle, it's not the same. It's not in bearing. So if this is the case, what we want to do is change the units. So if we just type in units, and it pops up this drawing units. And so what we want to do is under the angle, it's in degrees, minutes, seconds. We want to change it to surveyor's units, and now it's a bearing. Okay, hit OK, and now we'll click on this again. Okay, and it's in a bearing. Now you'll see the difference here. This says north 0 degrees 55 6 west, but we drew it from the north going south. It's the same bearing, but because of the direction we drew it, it's southeast. So it's just the inverse, but that's perfectly fine. Alright, so we're good there. We've got that one. So now let's draw the east-west section line. So again, we're going to start from this point and snap to it. Zoom over again. Here's our bearing, about halfway. And then he's got this corner, so this is kind of the midpoint. So we're going to snap to that and in that. So we'll kind of zip back over here and then verify it. So 26, 40, 66, and so it should be the same this time because we drew it in that direction.
Right.
So north 88.4. Okay. So now we have our section lines. We can do our offset command to get our statutory right of way, which he's already got on here. Basically what he calls the easement layer, but just it's easier to create our own, and it's on our own layer. So we're going to do O for offset. The distance is 24.75. Now we're going to click the object. We'll do this one, and we want to do it on this side, and then south side, and then we can keep just changing the objects. So now we want to do the north-south one over here and over here. So you see how you can't really see them that well because it's overlapping, but you can see them here.
Yeah.
So now what I want to do, this is all the information we really need to go from. So I want to clean the drawing up a little bit. So I want to go into layer properties, and I want to just basically turn everything else off. Okay, so I'm going to click on one of these and hit Control A, which will select everything, and then I'm just going to hit freeze. Okay, now we're on the current layer can't ever be frozen, but that's okay because that's the layer we want to show. So we're going to close that, and now you see this is all we have left in here, which is fine. That's all we really need. We know this is the section corner, we know these are the section lines and the statutory right of way. So before we do the next step, we do want to come back in, because the next step we're going to be bringing in the Civil 3D drawing as an xref, external reference, but we want to put that on a different layer. We don't want that on our right-of-way layer. Okay, so we're going to drop it to the 0 layer. The 0 layer is kind of like your dump layer, I mean, in general. So we're going to unfreeze 0. We haven't done anything on 0 layer yet, but we're going to make that the current layer. okay, by double clicking, okay? And so you can verify that it's up here, it's right there, okay? So now we want to bring in our Civil 3D layer so we can actually see the cross drains and the things that we need to be putting right away around. Ideally, instead of just guessing kind of based on things, it'd be better to know. So we're going to type in xref for external reference, and then we want to come up here to the attached drawing and attach DWG for drawing file. And again, this is in that same DJM folder, and we're going to click on the civil base. And this will just take just a little bit. Okay, you can see it working a little bit down there. Okay, so again, it's the same kind of idea. We don't want to have any of these checked for specifying on screen because we want it to just go where it's supposed to go. We don't want to have to tell it that. So we click OK, and then again, this will take just a second, and it should just pop right in there. Okay, there it goes. So don't worry too much about this. These are just kind of some of the things that are also attached to this drawing, but
Okay.
it's just kind of background noise. Okay, so we have this, and we can kind of see we still have our right of way, but it looks like it's kind of in the background. One thing we can do, when you put an xref, when you click on it, it highlights basically the whole thing as
Okay.
one. But again, you notice how our stuff's kind of in the back. So we can either double check to see, we can either do a regen or REA regen all, and it still didn't bring it up to the front. So there's another trick, it's called draw order. You just type that, and we select objects. We want that whole xref, and then right click, and we want it to go to the back. And see, now our stuff kind of pops up in the front.
Okay.
But also, there's still just a bunch of junk we don't need. We want to keep the pipes and, you know, the riprap here so we can kind of see what's going on. But all these contours and stuff, it gets a little messy. So even though when you click on this, it comes up as a whole thing, you can actually freeze individual layers within this. So we're going to go back to the freeze button and just kind of get rid of some of these contours, you know, and some of the unnecessary things a little bit. So some of the annotation and stuff. So I think that's probably good enough. But that makes it a little bit cleaner. So now we can see what we're doing here a little bit better. Okay, I better save this just in case, so we don't do something, have to start over. Okay. Okay. So the next thing, so now we've got our drawing in here, we've got our statutory right of way. So this goes back to what I was telling you before. Now we want to make layers. So we want to have probably individual layers for each individual right of way that we're going to do. Okay, so we know basically, and we can just kind of take a look. Anything that sticks out past this line, we're going to need right of way for.
Right.
Of way. Yeah. So I don't know if Dad mentioned just some of these driveways, but that'll be something too that needs right of way.
Okay.
So anything, so this is statutory right of way, so I don't know if he explained that. Basically all along a section line 24.75 feet out, that's statutory right of way, and then basically that was bought whenever they started. It's just owned by the state or whatever. But you can see how the roads, even though they're section line roads, they don't always do a very good job staying on them. So it's not from the center, your right of way is not always from the center line of the road, it's from here. So like this driveway, there's going to be a little bit up in here, and that's something we can discuss with him on these, how he wants to do those. But obviously, so there's a few there, a lot of the driveways, but obviously these big cross drains, and that's kind of what we'll focus on for now. We'll double check on all the driveways later, but obviously, so we have cross drain 1, cross drain 2, and then cross drain 3 that stick out. So we'll focus on that. So basically, what we want to do, and we'll just do it for this first one, we want to go to layer properties, and we want to create new layers. And so we want to say cross drain 01, say west right of way, and so we'll make those, I don't know, you can just keep them blue. Okay, but we want to make another one, so we'll say cross drain 1 east.
Because of each side of the road where that is at.
Yeah, and so because even if the same guy owns these, you have to put them separately, define them separately, because they have different ways to get to them. You see what I mean? So we'll discuss that. But and so now that we've created those layers, that's kind of what we want to draw when we do the right of way over here. We want to use that layer, and so we know, and we can be able to turn it on and off to not get confused with, because obviously you're going to be drawing a line from here over here, and so it'll get really cluttered if you're just piling them on top of each other.
Okay.
So if you make independent layers, and then even if you copy them over here, then you can turn that off as needed. Okay. So again, most of these you want to keep, when you're doing the right of way, you want to keep it essentially on the same bearings as the section line and the initial right of way, because if you think about, like, somebody's going to have to put a fence there or move a fence. Well, that fence is probably already on that bearing because it's so many feet off of here anyway. If you're making weird sometimes you can make angles or different things, but it's just, think about fencing and kind of what's the easiest thing. So you don't want to go too crazy, and it's probably easier to just square it off, and that's generally the tightest space around there. And again, most of these, basically, you kind of look and find the boundary of the edge of kind of construction. So here they're putting a little channel around here to fit in there, and you probably want to go at least 10 feet out from there, and then that provides enough ground that they can get in there and work and do all that, because you don't want to close it in too tight, and then you've gone through and gotten all the right-of-way documents, and then they go in and destroy more ground than that to build it. But again, it's still kind of an eyeball test. And just think about how much land you would want to give up if they were putting a cross drain, across your property there.
Right.
So, all right. So if we're wanting to keep these same general bearings and things, this is kind of what I showed you the other day. If we just go copy, we're just going to copy these two. So our east-west and our north-south, and we're just going to come stick them over here. To be used as needed, and obviously
you copied them together.
Yeah, so you can copy multiple objects. When it says select objects,
yeah,
that's so you go to your copy command. So it's select objects. You can click as many things as you want.
Okay.
And it carries them all at the same time.
Okay.
And it keeps them all at the same reference scale and everything. So we could just copy these one at a time. So you don't necessarily need to have hanging out over here, we can just copy our section lines here. So let's just say we want to do this one. So on the west side, so we're just going to start out, and then let's just copy the statutory right-of-way line, and then we just kind of want to move it about where we think. So I think the best thing would be just come to the edge here, about where the edge of the construction is, and just set it there. And so because this is a long enough line, we know just copying it over, even if we move it, it's still on the exact same bearing. You see what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's not going to change any of that. But we said, well, we want to go about 10 feet off of that. Well, it's hard to know exactly where we're at, so we can just offset 10 feet and then here. Okay, so now that's going to be our far west boundary, so we can just delete that one. So now let's come in and kind of close these up, so we can just copy this line and kind of just bring it, let's just say we want to bring it about here, and then the same thing down here. So there. So, and again, we'll just offset these another 10 feet because we kind of hugged where the edge of the construction was, and then now we're going to put those 10 feet out, and we'll just delete these interior lines. Okay, so now we got a bunch of lines going everywhere. But this square right here is going to be the right-of-way that we want to take.
Okay.
So we're going to just trim this up. So TR, we want to trim the corners. We'll do that first. Trim. Okay, so now we got these two sticking out here really far. But this is be something to note, because we're gonna, when we do this, we want to come from the section corner down, and then the closest corner is going to be our point of beginning. So what we actually want to do when we trim this side, we want to come and pick the middle section line, and then the closest one to it, we're just going to trim it to there, because we actually need this to be part of our measurements, this little section plus this. Whereas the back side, well, we need to trim both those, or no, we just want to trim it all the way to the statutory right-of-way line. Okay, so this is going to be the right-of-way we choose. So again, when we copied over this, we just kept it on this same section as statutory right-of-way line. Now we want to come in and change the layer, and so this is going to be our, let's see, it's going to be down here below the C's. So this will be the CD on the west side right-of-way. And we double click it to make that the current layer. Okay, so now we're going to draw in our polyline on top of this. Okay, so we just PL, and then we're going to come from the start point, which is here. I'm going to turn my snapping on. So F3. So we click here, and if we do it in chunks, so then we want to come to here, which we know is 24.7 feet at that same bearing, to here, and then we can go all the way to here because it's the same bearing. Come around, come to this end point, and then here there's no end point, but we want to get it right on that intersection, so we want to shift, right click, and go to intersection snap. Snap it right there, and then we're done. We right click and enter. So now if we highlight this, we have this whole thing. So
Okay.
we're going to copy this highlighted CO, copy, and we're just going to drag it a ways out here. Okay. So, and what I want to do before we lose track of what this is, obviously we're going to come out here, but let's just make some text. So just type TEXT text, and we're just going to label this, and this is going to be this cross drain 01 west right of way. Okay, and obviously that made that really small, so let's just, okay. And so, I don't know, can you see the blue very well on the background?
I think can you do the letters in like yellow, or do
Yeah.
you have to keep it the same as anything
No,
else?
so
Okay.
anything, even though it's on this layer,
Yeah.
you just click it and come to the properties and go to color. So we set the layer to be blue, so it says by layer blue,
Right.
but you can drop it and change to whatever.
Okay. Yeah, that's easier to
And
read,
we
I
can
feel
make
like.
this a little bit bigger too. So, okay. So now, so even if we wanted to change maybe this, so we know that the blue's the polyline, and maybe we want to say, well, the green, or we'll just keep it yellow so we don't get too confused, is going to be the line. Okay. So now we want to come in and draw our lines. But again, we want to start at the set where we call the section corner. I'm going to hit L, and then if we've got our snaps on, we can do this pretty quickly. So just from there to there. But here, instead of missing this one, we want to snap to here because we want that as a separate segment.
Because that's your
Yep.
24.75.
Because this is how far down the section line we go, and then this is how far off the section line we go to get to the point of beginning. So this point right here is what we're going to call the point of beginning, because it's the closest point to the section corner. So we'll click here, and then it's easier to just kind of keep going with that. And then just go around the corner, click here, now right click and enter. So now each one of these, and we've got it all in individual chunks. And so if you think about it, you do it in order. So now we're going to start at this section corner, and then you click here, we're going to travel 89.07 feet at a bearing of south 0 degrees 55 minutes 6 seconds east here, then 24.75 feet at this bearing to the point of beginning. So with these first two, that's just what it takes to get to the point of beginning.
Right.
Right? And I'll show you later the way we do our, when we make the actual like individual maps for each right of way, we have to write all that out officially. And I'll give you that information. And then
I think your dad saved the template for me on the ROW folder, maybe.
Okay.
I think he did.
Yeah. So I'll make sure that we've got all that in there.
Okay.
And then from the point of beginning, we go 34.72 feet at this bearing. Then we turn and do this. Then we turn and do this. And then we do this to return to the point of beginning. And that's it. And that's the full right-of-way description. So this is all the information we need. So one thing you could do is, you probably have to write it down and then copy it back. But if you wanted to just click on these and start writing it all down, but then maybe just have a separate, since you're in this layer, do M text, and then kind of just make a little thing here, and then you could say, you can just do it real brief, but you could get all the numbers. Begin at northwest corner, section 1, X feet, X bearing, and then just go ahead and write it out there.
Okay.
Again, that's real small, but, and then you could just have it here, okay? And so we have this, which is so if we highlight all of this, it's all in the same layer. Okay, so now we could come in and just freeze this layer. Well, that's the current, so let me just change to back to 0. Okay, and then now we can freeze this. Now this still looks like it's here, but we could just come back in and delete this stuff. because this is just our construction lines basically. Okay, and I know that's scary to delete stuff. If we delete that, so now it's clean, so there's nothing on cross drain 1 now, but we can come in and turn all that back on if we want to. So we'll just turn it on. And so now see, it's here.
Yeah.
And it's there. But it's just kind of that way, because, you know, most of the time, like this drawing, it's not that big of a deal because this is all you have over here. But also, you're going to have this one over here, so you're going to have a very similar line coming down and over. And so if you just freeze that and set it aside, then it's not something you're going to have to overlap or accidentally mess with, or, you understand? So the more lines you have on top of each other, sometimes the more messy it can get. And down the road, if you have, this is just an overlay, so we really don't go outside the boundaries of the roadway. But on like full reconstruction stuff, you're going to have grading work and all kind of stuff out here. So almost the whole way down, you're having to buy right away. So all of these are connected to each other, but then there's tons of different properties, you know, so you're going to have to constantly be breaking them up and stuff like that. So to me, it makes more sense. If you put everything on its own layer, then you can kind of do everything one at a time and slowly work through that. Oh, I did want to show you. Let me turn that back on. Just as far as another little AutoCAD tip. So let's just say let's just type this bearing in. So it's just north, and so something 44. So it always puts it as D, but there's a special code that if you put percent D, it automatically turns it into a degree symbol.
And what did you push?
So it's percent, and then the second you hit D, it automatically changes it.
Knock it off. Not you.
Yeah. So there's a bunch of those in here. That's the main one that I always remember. So then, obviously, you know, the rest are just regular symbols. But that's how you get to that.
Okay.
So we'll freeze that. And so now we can do the same thing over here. We'll just copy. Let's just cover this up. So we want to copy this. And the same thing, so we need to account for this sticking out here. So I want to copy that to there. We'll offset it about 10 feet. Delete that one. Do the same thing here. So I'm going to just copy and set that. It doesn't matter how close, just around in there. And then this is one, you know, that it's kind of debatable. So we'll talk about that in a second. So we'll offset this side because it's pretty flush on there. But again, this side is kind of debatable, where we should put an angle here or just kind of keep it as a square. You know, just thinking of property, you know, if this guy's farming out here, then that's something you may want to keep it as tight as possible. And sometimes we'll have to go back in, but for the most part, this one, you know, we'll just keep it fairly squared. So we'll offset this one 10 feet again and do that. And then so again, it's the same process. We'll just trim it up. We'll just start with these outside corners because we know we want to lose them all. Now, again, this inside, this far corner, because it's the furthest away, we're going to trim that to the statutory right-of-way line. But the inside corner, we want to trim to the section line. I did leave myself a lot of room there, but okay, so that way it's buttoned up to the section line, because again, we're going to go from here to the point of beginning. Okay?
Okay.
And so now we've got our right-of-way here. So we want to switch, go back down. So now we're on the east side. So For one, we
So,
want to, it's already sunny, so we want to turn on cross drain east right away.
so it wasn't turned on already.
It wasn't turned on. Well, it was turned on, but we'd never done anything with it. It was
Okay.
unfrozen, but there wasn't anything there. But what
Okay.
we want to do by double clicking it, we want to make that the current layer. So that's going to be the layer we're using. So we'll put it back to the blue. Okay, so now we got cross drain 1 east right away. And so now we're going to do our polyline PL from the start point, which is our section corner. Okay, and we want to come to here, and then here we don't need to stop it here. We'll just go all the way across because it's the same bearing, and that's another reason if you use the same bearing, it's easier. And then we'll just trace our thing, and then again we've got to do the intersection. So shift right click, intersection, and then right click and enter. Okay, so now we've got our next one. So we're going to copy it, and we'll just, we can drag them wherever. We'll just stick it down here, get it out of the way. So we'll change the color now. So we can do the same thing, so just text. We'll call this just cross drain 01 east right of way, which we need to make that bigger again. Okay, and so now we can do the same thing with our lines. So just L, and if we've got our snapping on, just the endpoint snap, just start at the top. Okay, from there to there, and again we want to stop here because that's the 24.75, the statutory right of way, to the point of beginning. Click there, and then now we can just work our way around. Okay, and then now we're done, and so these are individual segments again. Okay, and then that's just going to be what you'll have to basically click on each one, record the length, record the bearing,
And then type it on M text.
Yeah, so if you want to do that here, and then that way it's in the drawing already
Right.
there. And so instead of just being on a scratch, you probably have to write it on a piece of paper first, but then you can just do it there, and then that way it's saved into the drawing, and you don't have to keep going back and go double checking that. Plus, for your checks, when you are double checking all this for the last time, it's right there next to it. So you click it, look at it, click, so it's a little bit cleaner that way. So, and again now, so we'll have to change this because it's the current layer, so we can't freeze it. But if we set it back to 0, now we can just freeze that, and we can come in and just clean this drawing lines up. Okay.
When you clicked on it, did you literally just hit delete?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
So if you can also just type erase and then go in and click things too.
But once you unfreeze it, it all pops back.
No, so I deleted that.
Oh, it's just over on the side.
So I can just hit Control Z and it'll come back if I wanted to. So that's something I just haven't talked to you about. So let's just say I delete this. So I'm going to highlight all these and just hit delete. Okay. Now, if I don't do anything else and hit Control Z, it all comes back. Okay. Now let's delete it again. And let's just say I zoomed out and I panned over. I'm like, oh crap. I zoom back in. I need that again. So if I hit Control Z, nothing happened. Hit Control Z. Now watch down here. See what it says? Command undo zoom. And you have to keep hitting it. Now it's back. So it says undo the erase. Remember what I told you before, that there are actual commands for panning and zooming. Even though we do it really quickly with our mouse, every time we zoom in or pan with our mouse, AutoCAD thinks of that as an actual command.
Okay.
So if you hit undo, you have to undo each time you panned, each time you zoomed. So sometimes you just have to keep going until you get to it. So that's kind of annoying, but that's the way it is. So we don't need this because it's on that statutory right-of-way layer. Okay, so we can delete it, but I'll show you. We'll come back and we'll unfreeze both of these layers now. So you can see now they're both here.
Okay.
And we've got our stuff out here. Okay, so we don't lose it. Freezing is just kind of like, just hides it. Okay, but you just got to verify, and that's why you put everything on the same layer. And so that's just, you got to be very stringent about that and making sure what you're putting on a certain layer or not. Okay, so there you go. So that's already that right away done. And so you're going to do the same thing when you come over here. So you'll create two new layers. You'll create, a cross drain 02 north, a cross drain 02 south. And then you'll come in and do the exact same thing. Just copy this and set it about on the edge. Offset it 10 feet. Delete, and then we want to go grab this one, and just the same thing. Offset them. And then just trim it up. Okay, so now when we're doing these over here, again, when we're trimming, we're coming from the section corner every time. Okay, so you go to the closest section corner. Because we're only doing a half mile each direction, the closest section corner is always going to be this one. So if you were down here over here, the closest section corner would be over here. And that's
but since we're only halfway, all of them are the same thing.
So we stopped at that halfway point. So anything past this marker, we would go back to this section corner.
So that gravel, those gravel spots there, well, he doesn't have those on the map to do. Or do I do those gravel spots as well?
So this is where you're going to have to talk with him on the driveways. I don't think he marked any of the driveways. Maybe not. But we'll talk with him and say, hey, look, there's a lot of these driveways that are over the right-of-way line.
Okay.
Now, that could be sometimes if it's just fixing up the existing driveway, then there's nothing to, you don't need extra right-of-way. You just coordinate with the landowner that says, hey, we're fixing your driveway as part of this job. So
okay,
you're welcome.
And they're typically just grateful.
Yep. Yeah.
So can you, unless you have a different plan, whatever you're thinking, but can you save this and me jump in and do like the other side or something?
Yeah. Yep. So I'm going to stop the video here.